Have you ever felt like something was wrong, but couldn't quite put your finger on it? As if a heavy silence were hiding a truth no one dared speak? That's how I felt the day I turned 65, a day that should have been one of celebration, laughter, and hugs, but which turned into the loneliest night of my life. I spent weeks planning every detail. Fresh flowers, a beautiful table, everyone's favorite food. I dreamed of my grandchildren running around the house, my son smiling beside me. But instead, I sat at an empty table, waiting for people who never arrived. And you know what's worse? It wasn't an oversight. It was something much crueler, something calculated. When I finally worked up the courage to pick up my phone, I found the answer. They weren't stuck in traffic. They hadn't had a last-minute surprise. They were at sea, laughing and toasting on a luxury cruise, everyone together, except me. And it was there, with my heart in pieces, that something inside me awakened. I wasn't just forgotten. I was being erased, but that night of solitude wouldn't be the end of me. It would be the beginning of a journey that would show me who was truly by my side and who had been manipulating my family's every move. I just didn't know that to discover the truth, I would have to open doors that might have been better left closed. Brace yourself, because this story isn't just about family betrayal. It's about silent manipulation, revealed secrets, and lies so well constructed they seemed unshakable. It's about how a simple DNA test can dismantle years of deception and reveal truths no one ever imagined. And if you think you've seen it all, wait until you meet the woman who orchestrated every detail of this cruel plan, a woman who carried a false identity and a shadowy past. She believed no one would ever find out, but she forgot that the truth, sooner or later, always finds a way out. If you've ever felt like someone was trying to erase you from your own story, or if you've ever suspected a smile that seemed too sweet to be real, this story will touch your heart, because sometimes you have to lose everything to finally see who's by your side out of love, and who's there just for your own gain. Now come with me. I'll tell you how, on the day I turned 65, I discovered that my family was never really mine. But I'll also show you how the power of truth can rebuild what seemed lost forever. Planning that birthday party was like reliving memories of happier times. I chose every detail with such care, from the fresh flowers that would add a touch of life to the table to the carefully crafted menu to please everyone. After all, celebrating 65 years surrounded by family seemed like the best way to prove that, despite the losses and pain, true love still existed between us. I wanted it to be a night of genuine togetherness, something simple yet unforgettable. I spent hours in the kitchen, blending aromas that brought back memories of Elliot as a boy. The roast slowly browning in the oven, the chocolate cake decorated with care. Every little piece of that preparation carried a special meaning. I imagined my grandchildren, Tommy and Emma, laughing loudly, running around the room with that energy only children possess. My heart swelled with anticipation to see them there, close to me. The dinner table looked like something out of a magazine. The place cards were in my best handwriting, with everyone's name: Elliot, Meadow, Ruth, Carl, Tommy, Emma, and my own, at the head. I could almost hear the mingling voices, the toasts, the laughter. In my mind, this night would be perfect, a silent proof that, even after so much loss, family remained my safe haven. As I packed everything, I remembered Elliot telling me years ago that I was the heart of the family. That phrase echoed within me as a reminder that my effort was worth it. I believed that, despite our differences, no one would be able to break that bond. I didn't imagine that behind polite smiles lay a silent manipulation. So subtle it infiltrated the small gestures of everyday life. I chose my dress carefully. Navy blue with pearl buttons, the kind of outfit Elliot always said made me look elegant. It was as if, in that detail, I wanted to show that I was still important, that my presence still mattered. But deep down, an almost imperceptible fear began to emerge, as if something inside me sensed that this night wouldn't be as I'd imagined. Still, I pressed on. I filled the vases with fresh flowers and lit candles to create a cozy atmosphere. I wanted everyone to feel, upon entering, that this was a home filled with love. My every move, carried a silent hope that for one night there would be no lies in Elliot's marriage, no secrets bitterly revealed. It would just be us, a united and true family. As I arranged my cutlery, I glanced out the window and saw the garden Elliot had helped tend when he was little. I couldn't help but smile as I remembered him running barefoot, bringing me little flowers as gifts. It was these memories I clung to, believing everything would be okay. I didn't know that, at that very moment, a cruel plan was underway to erase me. When I finished everything, I sat for a moment to breathe and take in the atmosphere, the smell of the food, the glow of the candles, the impeccable table. It seemed like a setting ready for love. I didn't yet know that hours later, that same setting would become the stage for my greatest silent despair, marking the beginning of a night that would change my life forever. The hours passed, and little by little, the joy that filled my heart began to give way to a strange restlessness. I glanced at the clock, then at the door, expecting the doorbell to ring or the sound of the car pulling up. But nothing. I called Elliot, and the connection went straight to voicemail. I tried Ruth, but she didn't answer either. It was as if everyone had suddenly disappeared. The candles I'd lit so carefully were melting, leaving only sad stubs on the spotless table. The roast, which should have been served still warm, was slowly cooling in the oven. The cake, which had taken me hours to prepare, remained untouched, almost mocking my effort. A tightness gripped my chest. I tried to justify it. Traffic, some unforeseen event, perhaps a scheduling misunderstanding. But deep down, a sense of calculated abandonment was beginning to set in. When the clock struck 8 o'clock, hope simply vanished. It wasn't delay. It was absence. A heavy silence fell over the house, so different from what I had imagined. This wasn't an innocent oversight. It was something bigger, something planned. A cold gesture that only someone carrying silent manipulation in their hearts would be capable of orchestrating. And for the first time, I felt truly invisible. With trembling hands, I grabbed my phone to try to find an answer. Then, at the top of my feed, I saw the image that took my breath away. Meadow, radiant, wearing a beautiful white dress, hugging Elliot. Behind them, the endless blue of the sea. And the caption, "Living the best life in the Mediterranean. Grateful for this family moment." Family? That photo screamed that I was no longer a part of it. I scrolled down, and more photos came at me like knives. Tommy and Emma building sandcastles. Ruth and Carl toasting with sophisticated cocktails in the bar of a sleek ship. Everyone there, everyone together, except me. And to make matters worse, the posts had been made only an hour ago. While I waited, alone, they were thousands of miles away, laughing, toasting, and erasing any trace of guilt. It was at that moment that I felt something break inside me. It wasn't just sadness. It was a mixture of anger, humiliation, and a pain that had no name. This wasn't neglect. It was a planned act of exclusion, almost like emotional gaslighting, where the person is pushed into oblivion without realizing it. They had chosen to erase me, to remove me from the narrative of the very family I helped build. The phone vibrated. A short message from Elliot. "Sorry, Mom. I forgot to tell you we'd be away this week. Meadow planned a surprise. Happy birthday. I forgot to warn you." As if a Mediterranean cruise were something so casual that you simply omit it. That simple lie carried all the confirmation that something was very wrong. And for the first time, I saw Meadow clearly. She wasn't who she said she was. I looked at the set table, the untouched cake, the flowers beginning to wilt. I was surrounded by everything I had prepared with love, but nothing made sense anymore. In that moment, I felt a cruel plan had been exposed. And even without understanding all the details, a certainty grew within me. That night was just the tip of the iceberg of revealed secrets that I would still have to face. After that night, the memories began to haunt me in a different way. Those small episodes that had previously seemed like harmless coincidences now took on new meaning. How could I have missed the signs? It was as if a fog had lifted, revealing a pattern that had always been right before my eyes. Every forgotten moment, every missed invitation, every change of plans, all part of a much larger game. I remembered Tommy's 4th birthday party. I'd arrived full of anticipation to see my grandson blow out the candles, but Meadow greeted me at the door with a fake smile and said, "Oh, Loretta, didn't they tell you? We changed it to tomorrow because of something unexpected." As I spoke, I heard laughter and music coming from inside. And when I confronted Elliot later, he swore the party had been that day. At the time, I accepted his excuse. Now, I understand what really happened. Little Emma's first day of school also came to mind. I asked Meadow 3 times what time I should go with them and capture that special moment. She told me it would be very early, at 7 in the morning, probably too early for me. But something made me insist, and when I arrived, I discovered that Emma had already been in class since the usual time. I had missed the most important moment of her life because of a calculated lie. And how could I forget last Christmas? 2 days before, Meadow called me with a voice full of false concern. She said Elliot was very stressed with work and wanted a quiet Christmas, just with his immediate family. I spent the night alone, watching old movies and eating leftovers. Days later, I found out from Ruth that there had been a huge dinner with over 20 people, laughter, and photos posted on social media. Another planned exclusion. Revisiting those moments, I felt the weight of the emotional gaslighting I suffered. Meadow created situations to make me believe I was a hindrance, that I was dispensable. Always with a sweet, almost maternal tone, as if she were looking out for me. But in reality, it was a subtle psychological control, weakening my bond with Elliot and silently alienating my grandchildren. I realized everything was done with frightening precision. Never a direct attack, never a clear accusation. Just small manipulations that, accumulated, transformed me into a distant figure. Before I knew it, I was already being erased from their memories, as if I were merely a piece that could be removed without causing a loss. This was no accident. It was a calculated abandonment. The cruise photos were just the culmination of this cruel plan. But now, looking back, I saw that the construction of this lie had been going on for much longer. It was as if Meadow had a checklist of steps to make me irrelevant, and she followed each one perfectly. And worse, Elliot didn't realize it. He trusted her blindly, believing every word as if it were the pure truth. It was in this whirlwind of memories that something inside me shifted. I stopped being a passive victim and began to see the need to fight back. I could no longer allow that woman to control my family like puppets. I didn't yet know how, but I felt that soon the shocking truth would come to light. And this time, I would be ready to face it. It was an ordinary morning, cold and silent, when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially after the feeling of exclusion that had taken over my life. Through the crack in the curtain, I saw a man standing in the doorway. He looked nervous, as if carrying a weight he didn't know how to release. For a moment, I considered not answering, but something in his gaze made me open the door. He introduced himself in a low, almost hesitant voice. "My name is David Chen. Are you Loretta Patterson, Elliot's mother?" My heart raced. How could a stranger know so much about me? Before I could ask, he took a deep breath and said something that made my body freeze. "I need to talk to you about Meadow." In that instant, I felt the truth I'd feared was about to emerge. I invited him in, still suspicious. David sat on the edge of the sofa, fidgeting, his hands clasped tightly as if trying to hold back his courage. He looked at me with a mixture of pain and determination and began to tell a story that sounded too absurd to be a lie. He said he'd met Meadow years before she married Elliot, and that she'd simply disappeared from his life without a trace. He revealed that they had lived together for 2 years and were planning to get married. But when she discovered she was pregnant, she disappeared. She didn't leave a note, didn't answer phone calls, didn't reply to messages. She simply erased her own existence. He searched for months, but it was as if she had never existed. And for a moment, I felt that same feeling of being erased from someone's life, without explanation. Then David stopped, looked into my eyes, and said with a tremor in his voice, "I believe Tommy is my son." That sentence hit me like a punch. I gasped, as if the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. Tommy? My grandson? My heart sank, and 1,000 questions raced through my mind at once. It was impossible. Or was it? He pulled an old photo of himself as a child from his pocket. The resemblance to Tommy was undeniable. The same shy smile, the same curious look, even the small scar on Tommy's chin from a bike fall. My body shivered. I wanted to deny it, but I couldn't. It was like looking at a copy of my grandson from another time. David explained that ever since he saw a recent photo of the boy, he couldn't ignore the coincidences anymore. He hired an investigator, followed every lead, and discovered Meadows' whereabouts. But he didn't want to make any rash decisions. I needed to be sure before interfering with a child's life. And that's why I was there, in my office, carrying a truth he also didn't want to accept. In that moment, something became clear. Everything I felt, the silent manipulation, the planned exclusion, the emotional gaslighting, was just part of something much bigger. I wasn't just dealing with lies at my son's wedding. I was about to uncover a much more cruel plan, a secret revealed that would forever change the fate of our family. David took a deep breath before continuing. He pulled a manila envelope from a folder and placed it carefully on the table. "Here are the DNA test results," he said gravely. My heart raced just hearing those words. When I opened it and saw the cold numbers on the paper, I felt as if the air had been knocked from my lungs. 7% probability of paternity. Tommy was not Elliot's son. Along with the results, David brought documents and photos that revealed even more secrets about Meadows' past. I discovered her name wasn't even Meadow. Her real name was Margaret Winters. Suddenly, the woman I thought I knew became a complete stranger. He showed her records of previous marriages, 2 different men, 2 relationships that ended as mysteriously as they began. Every detail painted the picture of a skilled manipulator, someone who knew exactly how to control and isolate her victims. David explained that she had a history of approaching stable, financially well-off men and slowly alienating them from their family and friends. After a while, she would disappear, taking whatever she could, and sometimes leaving behind children who weren't who they thought they were. The more he talked, the more the pieces fell into place. All those situations that once seemed like oversights or misunderstandings were actually part of a calculated plan. Meadow always looked at me with a gentle smile. But there was something behind that look. It was as if, behind the apparent sweetness, there was someone cold, willing to do anything to maintain control. David also discovered that when she entered Elliot's life, she was already 2 months pregnant. Hearing this, my body shivered. I remembered how everything had happened so quickly, the whirlwind courtship, the rushed wedding, and, shortly after, the news that Tommy had arrived prematurely. The timeline simply didn't add up, and now I understood why. She had built her entire marriage on a lie. She used another man's pregnancy to ensure a stable life with Elliot. And, as if that weren't enough, she erased me from their lives to avoid any risk of anyone getting suspicious. I was a threat to the house of cards she'd built. If I'd been around, I might have noticed Tommy's similarities to someone else. David looked at me with a mixture of anger and sadness. "She didn't just deceive you, Loretta. She deceived all of us. And if we don't stop it, she'll continue to destroy anyone who gets close to her." In that moment, I felt a mixture of pain and indignation. It was a family betrayal on a level I never imagined. My daughter-in-law didn't just exclude me. She built an entire life based on fraud and deceit. Holding those documents, I realized there was no turning back. I needed to protect Elliot. I needed to protect the children. But most of all, I needed to end this charade. Unmasking Meadow was no longer an option. It was a necessity to save what little remained of our family. I spent days rehearsing what to say. Every word had to be precise, because I knew Meadow, or rather Margaret, was an expert at distorting reality. I arranged a dinner, pretending it was just a reconciliation meeting. Elliot accepted the invitation with the same sweetness as always, unaware of the weight of what was to come. He still believed he was in a solid marriage, unaware it was built on lies. The table was set as usual, but the mood was different. As Tommy and Emma played innocently in the next room, I felt the tension rising. Meadow entered with that practiced smile, wearing an air of false calm. Her eyes roamed the room, calculating every detail, as if sensing something was out of place. But still, she maintained her pose as the perfect wife. During dinner, the conversation was superficial. I asked about the trip, listened to stories about the cruise, and even praised the children for having a great time. But inside, my heart beat with a mixture of anger and courage. I knew that in a few minutes, this theater would end. I would no longer be the silent, and humiliated grandmother. I would be the voice of truth. When the plates were cleared, I looked directly at Elliot, then at Meadow. "There's something important I need to share with you." My voice was calm, almost soft. I opened the envelope beside me and placed the documents on the table. "This is a DNA test, and it proves that Tommy is not Elliot's biological son." The silence that followed was deafening. Elliot paled, picking up the papers with trembling hands. Meadow froze, her smile fading for the first time. She tried to speak, but I cut her off, delivering the final blow. "Or should I call you by your real name, Margaret Winters?" The impact was immediate. She was speechless, and in that instant, her entire mask fell away. Elliot looked at her, confused and devastated. "Is it true? Tell me it's not true." His voice sounded like a cry for help. But Meadow just looked away, unable to sustain the lie. It was the unmasking she'd been waiting for, the undoing of a lie she'd maintained for years. For the first time, Elliot saw who was truly at his side. She tried to fight back, saying it was all a misunderstanding, that I was trying to destroy her out of jealousy. But this time, words held no power. I had proof. I had David. I had the shocking truth on my side. Elliot took a deep breath, his eyes welling with tears, and whispered, "You've been deceiving me this whole time, using my love, my trust, to build this charade?" From the other room, the children's innocent laughter seemed a cruel contrast to what was happening here. I looked at Meadow one last time and said firmly, "It's over. Your cruel plan has been exposed. You will no longer manipulate this family." And in that moment, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. But at least the truth had finally come out. After that confrontation, the silence that hung in the air was almost suffocating. Meadow, who always had an answer for everything, finally seemed at a loss. She stood slowly, trying to maintain a dignified posture, but the tremor in her hands betrayed her. "I don't need to hear this," she said, her voice cold. But we all knew that, in that moment, her perfect facade had crumbled. Elliot was still in shock. He sat, staring at the documents as if somehow the words might change if he read them again. It was a quiet desperation, the pain of realizing his entire recent life had been built on deception. "Why?" he asked almost in a whisper. Meadow simply looked away, unable to face the man she had manipulated for so many years. She tried to leave quickly, but I stopped her at the door. "If you leave now, know that nothing will ever be the same again. David won't let you get away this time, and neither will I." She gave me a look of pure hatred, but said nothing. It was the first time I'd seen real fear in her eyes. The woman who thought she was untouchable finally understood that she'd lost control. That same night, Elliot and David came together to plan their next steps. For the first time, they were on the same side, united not by rivalry, but by the need to protect Tommy and Emma. The true union Meadow had so feared was happening. Meadow, who had spent years sowing distrust and distance, was now witnessing the emergence of a force she could no longer break. In the days that followed, Meadow tried to defend herself. She made up stories, tried to blame David, even insinuated that I was fabricating it all out of revenge, but no one believed her anymore. The unmasking was complete. Her false identity, her past secrets, and her cold-blooded plans were laid bare. There was nowhere left to hide. Elliot, heartbroken, decided to take the final step. She filed for divorce immediately, and her lawyers made sure she had no access to anything else. She left the house she once pretended to call home with a small purse and a lost look in her eyes. Meadow, who had once controlled everything, now had nothing. It was the inevitable downfall of someone who built their life on lies in marriage. For the children, it was a delicate process. Tommy, even without understanding everything, felt his mother's absence. But little by little, with patience and love, we showed him that the royal family isn't made up of those who deceive, but of those who stay to care. Emma, younger, adapted better, feeling that there was now more peace at home. We protected the innocent as gently as we could. And so, Meadow disappeared as quickly as she had appeared in our lives. But this time, she didn't just leave silence. She left a scar that will never be forgotten, but one that also taught a lesson. The power of truth always finds a way, and those who live to manipulate will inevitably fall one day. The first few months after Meadow's departure were challenging. There was a strange emptiness in the house, but at the same time, a sense of quiet relief. Elliot was fragile, but no longer trapped by the psychological control that suffocated him. It was as if, for the first time in years, he could breathe without fear. The manipulator's downfall made room for something that should never have been lost: true family unity. David slowly began to approach. At first, Tommy was confused, not quite understanding who this man with a gentle smile was. But with patience, David earned his place without forcing anything. He didn't want to replace Elliot, but to add to it. And unexpectedly, we created a new dynamic where love, not lies, was the center of everything. The children, even with the scars of absence, adapted with impressive resilience. Tommy still called Elliot Dad, but he also began calling David Daddy Dave. Emma, more reserved, found in me a haven of affection and security. For the first time, I felt truly present in their lives, unhindered by silent manipulation. Little by little, Elliot recovered. With everyone's support, he started taking care of himself again, regaining the joy in his eyes and the strength Meadow had drained from him. I realized that despite all the pain, he now saw more clearly who was truly there for him. Our relationship, which had been so weakened, began to rebuild with sincerity and genuine affection. Sundays became special. David, Elliot, Tommy, Emma, and I would gather for lunch. We laughed, talked about the week, and most importantly, shared simple, real moments without secrets. It was a family rebirth. What once seemed lost forever became a new opportunity for an unexpected new beginning, full of emotional healing. Even the energy of the house changed. Where there had been tension, there was now lightness. The children's laughter echoed through the hallways, bringing life to every corner. I felt useful again, an essential part of something bigger. After so long being excluded, I was finally where I was always meant to be, in the heart of my family. David and Elliot learned to share responsibilities without rivalry. Tommy gained more than a biological father. He gained two men who, in different ways, loved him deeply. Emma grew up with the example that truths can hurt, but they also set us free. And I, after all this, saw that even the biggest lies can be overcome by the power of truth. This reconstruction didn't erase the scars, but it brought a new certainty. A real family is made of those who stay, of those who choose to love unconditionally. Meadow tried to destroy us, but in the end, she only brought us closer together. The love that withstood lies and betrayal proved stronger than any cruel plan. Looking back, I realized that that night of my birthday was much more than a moment of pain. It was the turning point that revealed everything hidden in the shadows. The loneliness I felt at that empty table became the key to unmasking a lie that threatened to destroy our family. Sometimes you have to face abandonment to find the truth that sets you free. Meadow believed she could manipulate everyone forever. She used emotional gaslighting to silence me, pushed my son away with cold tactics, and tried to erase me from my grandchildren's lives. But the truth, no matter how hard they try to bury it, always finds a way to surface. And when it does, it shatters even the best constructed lies. Today, I see that every tear I shed had a purpose. It was through pain that I found the strength to act. I could have remained silent. I could have accepted the role of invisible grandmother, but I chose to fight. Not just for myself, but for Elliot, Tommy, Emma, and even David, who was also a victim of this woman. Silent justice sometimes begins at home. I learned that family isn't just about blood ties, but about those who choose to be by our side, even when everything falls apart. David didn't need to come to me, but he had the courage to knock on my door and reveal the shocking truth. Elliot didn't need to accept this new reality, but he opened his heart to rebuild what seemed lost. This is love that endures. I know many people go through something similar. Maybe it's not Meadow, Maybe it's not a DNA test, but rather someone trying to diminish you, exclude you, or steal your rightful place. The message is simple. Never let someone's lie define who you are. Even when everything seems to be falling apart, the power of truth can revive and rebuild what was destroyed. Today, I no longer hate Meadow. I feel pity. She had the chance to live something real and chose to live a life of deception. While she ran away again, we stayed. We chose the truth. We chose to be a real family, even with all the scars. That is the greatest victory over any cruel plan. If I could give one piece of advice to anyone listening to my story, it would be, pay attention to the small signs. Sometimes manipulation comes disguised as kindness. Sometimes the greatest enemy is closer than you think. But it's never too late to open your eyes and fight for what's right. It's never too late to stand up. And finally, I understood that I wasn't the one who lost my family that birthday. It was Meadow who lost her chance at one. I wasn't erased. I was saved. Because the truth, when it comes, doesn't destroy the innocent. It only frees. And now I ask you, how many times have you ignored that silent voice inside you telling you something wasn't right? How many times have you blindly trusted someone who seemed perfect but was hiding secrets that could change everything? Sometimes life gives us subtle signs, but we're too busy to notice until the truth explodes in our faces. This story is a reminder that the truth always finds a way to surface, even when it seems buried. It's also an invitation to look around and appreciate those who truly choose to be by your side without the need to manipulate, deceive, or hide. True love doesn't need masks. If you've ever experienced something similar, you know how much it hurts to be betrayed by the very person you're supposed to protect. But you also know how liberating it is to discover who truly stands by you. And if you're still in the midst of this storm, don't give up. Justice may be silent, but it will come. Now I want to hear from you. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between remaining silent or speaking out? Leave your comment. It might help others going through something similar. And if this story touched you in any way, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, you'll always find stories that reveal that even in the worst lies, there's a path to a new beginning.